Okay, so in class, we started talking about volume word problems. We did a word problem on the board that required you to think a little bit outside the box. You not only had to be able to find volume, but you had to add in your problem-solving skills rather than just getting a picture and solving for the volume. So this video is going to tackle some more volume word problems so that we can talk about them in class and you're more prepared. So let's look at the first one. The volume of a regulation basketball is approximately 456 inches cubed. What is the diameter of the basketball? Okay, so we got to first think, what shape is a basketball? Well, it's not just a simple circle, it's a sphere. So to give this circle a little bit of depth, I'm going to use some dotted lines. That just makes it look a little bit more 3D and more like a basketball. Okay, so this isn't asking us to find the volume, they're giving us the volume. So we're going to be using the formula to figure out what the diameter is. So first thing you got to do, remember the formula for the volume of a sphere. Now you will have that available to you during the test, so you could look it up. Volume is equal to 4/3 pi r cubed. Okay, now, only thing that we know is the volume. So I'm going to plug in my volume where the V is. 456 is equal to 4/3 pi r cubed. Now, you know how this works. We've got to figure out how to find the diameter. Well, the only thing in this problem that we can even solve for is the radius, but if we can figure out what the radius is, we can figure out what the diameter is. So we got to work to get the radius by itself. So I've got to divide both sides by 4/3 pi to figure out what the radius is. Now, here's where your calculator is a good friend. So in your calculator, you need to be careful on this because you've got to make sure that you divide by the correct things. Now, I'm going to do this to make it a little bit easier on myself. I'm going to do 456 divided by 4/3 first. So 556 divided by parentheses 4/3, or 4 divided by 3, close parentheses, enter. That gives me 342. Then I'm also going to take that number and I'm going to divide it by pi, and that gives me 108.9. So 108.9 equals r cubed. Okay, so I'm going to move up here so that we have a little bit more room. So 108.9 equals r cubed. Now here's something different. You have probably not had to do r cubed before and having to get rid of it. Now, the easiest way to do this is a button on your calculator. Now, we know that we do the opposite of squaring something by taking the square root. Well, the opposite of cubing something is taking the cube root. When we're doing r cubed, it's actually r times r times r. So we've got to do the cube root, which will figure out what the r is. Okay? So in your calculator, you're either going to have one of two buttons. You're going to have a cube root button that looks like this, or you're going to have a button that looks like this, where instead of having the 2 there or having nothing there, it has an X so that you can plug whatever you need to into it. In this case, you'll be putting a 3 in. Now, my calculator has this 3 button, so I'm going to do the cubed root of 108.9. So cubed root of 108.9 is 4.8. So 4.8 equals r. Well, that was easy. But I haven't answered my question yet. Now I've got to find the diameter. So I simply take my radius of 4.8, multiply it times 2, and I get that my diameter is 9.8 9.6, and I know that I am in inches. So the diameter of a regulation basketball is approximately 9.6 inches. Now, this video is getting a little bit long, so let's look at this next one very quickly. So, to the right, we have a chocolate ice cream cone with the ice cream creating a half sphere, which we call a hemisphere. So that's a new term. A hemisphere is a half of a sphere. Now, you see for the cone, you can tell what the cone is, and then you see that the ice cream's sitting on top of it. So, if the radius of the cone is 2 inches, so that's here, and the height of the cone is 5 inches, and the radius of the scoop, so we got to add the radius of the scoop, is 2 inches, how much ice cream do you have to eat? Okay, so that means that the ice cream is going to be filling up the cone and it's going to be filling up the scoop, obviously. So now I got to find the volume of both of them. This is what we call a composite figure, where we have to find the volume of more than one thing. So let's do the volume of the cone first. We know that the volume is equal to 1/3 area of the base times the height. Our shape of the base is a circle, so I can replace area of base with pi r squared. So volume is 1/3 pi, my radius is 2, so 2 squared, times the height, which is 5. Now you can put all of this into the calculator, and you can leave pi or you can calculate it. For this case, I'm going to leave pi because it's going to be easier. So 1/3 times 2 squared times 5 gives me 6.6. Alright, so I get volume is equal to 6.6 pi. Now I've got to find the volume of the hemisphere. We know it's 4/3 pi r cubed, and then we're going to be dividing that by 2. So we need to figure out what the radius is. It's 2. So volume is equal to 4/3 pi 2 cubed over 2. Now, you have a button on your calculator that is usually something like x to the y, and that's going to allow you to do this 2 cubed, or you can do it in your head. 2 times 2 times 2. So 2 times 2 is 4, then times 2 is 8. So we need to do 4/3 times 8, and then divide that by 2, gives me volume equals 5.3 pi. Now, of course, these are in inches cubed. Now, to find the total amount of ice cream you're going to be eating, what do you have to figure out? Now we have to add them together. So 6.6 plus 5.3 gives me 11.9 pi inches cubed. If I want to multiply that out, I simply multiply 11.9 times pi, and that gives me 37.4 inches cubed. So this was an extremely long video, for which I apologize, but it's very important that we get into these word problems. So I will see you in class. Make sure you go to Google Classroom to do the questions.